Hi, everyone. We will begin shortly. We're just going to wait until the top of the hour. So just hang tight. Just going to give it like another 30 seconds just to see if more trickle in. All right, well, we can get it started and let people join in as we do our little intro. So just welcome everyone to Escape the Limitations of Oracle's FBDI with Andrew Gooch. Before I pass it off to Andrew, I just want to go over a few things. Everyone will receive the recording and presentation within the next 24 hours after today's webinar. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, I recommend to save them for the end. Feel free to type them in the Q&A section or the chat throughout the presentation, but we will answer those at the end. And so a little bit about our presenter, Andrew. So Andrew is a part of the commercial team here at More4apps. They focus on explaining what our solutions have to offer, and they help with the implementation process. His background is actually more technical than that, though, and he's had a number of developer and DBA roles in the Oracle space since the early days of 11i. These days, his role is more functional, and that gives him exposure to a lot of the problems you might be facing in data integration, especially those of you who are FBDI users. So without further ado, here's Andrew. Andrew?
Well, thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. Like Stephanie just mentioned there, today's focus will be on FBDI. So that's the data loading within Oracle Fusion Cloud. But we'll also be focusing on spreadsheet integration as a concept in the Oracle ecosystem. So what are the reasons we might want to employ it? And obviously all the pitfalls and traps that we might want to avoid with it. This is a rough guide to what we'll be covering in this session today. So I'll start by introducing More4apps, just first up to explain who we are, and then I'll briefly discuss the challenges we face with data entry and what we're trying to solve, really, when we use FBDI. And then we'll look at FBDI in a little bit of detail, discuss some of the strengths and weaknesses there, and then we'll stop briefly in the middle of that to get some feedback from you in the audience about how FBDI impacts your business. And after that, we'll take a look at the More4apps solutions, and I'll try to give you a sense of what they're all about. And there should be time at the end for a Q&A session. So if you can save your questions for then, if you have them, that should make things run a bit smoother. So let's get into it. I'll start with More4apps. It's worthwhile, I think, giving you a little background so that you understand why you might want to listen to what we have to say. The company has been around for a number of years now. It was set up to improve data entry efficiency in the Oracle ERP. So we've been in the 11i and R12 market for quite a long time with our EBS toolbox. And in the Cloud Fusion space, we have ERP Cloud Toolbox, which is the focus of today's talk. And this is a suite of spreadsheet-based loading tools geared to improving data loading performance and outcomes in Oracle Cloud Fusion. And we'll learn a little bit more detail about that in a few minutes. But let's start at the beginning. The bread and butter of any ERP system really is data. And it comes in many shapes and forms. Transactional data, master data, config data, setup data, and all of that. And obviously that data needs to come from somewhere. And how we get it into the system is going to have a great impact on its usefulness, especially if we have slow or inaccurate entry mechanisms. If we think about data, there are two main considerations which always come up. Obviously, the first one is accuracy. It needs to be clean and trustworthy. After all, we're driving our business and revenue from it. The other one is completeness, and that comes tied together with the speed of entry. It needs to be entered in the required time frames. It's not really much use to us if we don't have it available when we need it. And if you don't have the right tools to keep up with your demands, you'll run into problems, bottlenecks, basically. And if you have bottlenecks, that's going to ultimately limit your ability to run your business properly. So obviously, we don't want any of that. So the first thing we need to do is assess the situation, identify our problem areas, the reasons behind that, and ensure we're taking the best approach to data management, which means understanding A, what we're doing right now, and B, what our options are to get the best possible outcomes. If you take a look at the problem holistically, it looks like this, basically. We have a variety of data sources, and the end goal is to get that into Oracle so we can generate our documents, our invoices, orders, and so on to drive our reporting and gather our revenue. And the default approach, if you like, for entering it into the system is user forms. The other main one is IT-centric solutions, which provide data directly interfaced to Oracle. So user forms don't require much explaining. You get them out of the box, and in principle, they work for every requirement. But they take time and manpower to operate, and they create problems when data volumes creep up. IT-driven solutions, they're the reverse, really. They're ideally suited for high data volumes, and you can tailor them to be an exact match for your requirements. And so in a perfect world, we might have one in place for every bottleneck. But that performance win comes at a price. They're costly to set up and maintain, and when measured in terms of lead times and overall money spent, that cost can be prohibitive. So, there's downsides to both of these options. But there is a third way, if you like, which a lot of organizations find appealing, and that's solutions that use a spreadsheet as a collection tool rather than a user form. And, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Excel, it's easy to understand. It's a tool. It's been around for a really long time. Everybody knows it, and we don't really need a whole lot of training to get it running. Well, why the appeal? So if we look in detail at the forms approach, we can see the main problem. Entering complex data in user forms is complicated. End users have to navigate deep into entry forms and then out again for each element. It's time consuming. And because a lot of the data is hidden behind sub-level forms, it's not easy to get a clear picture really of what we have. And the problem is that while we're doing all that, we're actually not adding any value. We're just trying to keep our head above water, keeping the system up to date. So look, we all know this. So on the surface, at least, the spreadsheet option looks much better. In theory, at least, we can strip out all that navigation. And then with all our information in the grid of a worksheet, we can pass it up to Oracle from there. We'll get wide visibility of our data, everything visible in one sheet. And there's rows and rows of capacity to load lots of things at once. And also those nice features like copy and paste to accelerate the data entry. Plus, spreadsheets are already in digital format, aren't they? So we can fill them up from other digital sources relatively easily. And that's all going to help reduce our data entry timeframes. So Oracle agrees, and they've given us a solution, FBDI. And I'm guessing this audience is familiar with FBDI. It is the main topic for today's discussion after all. But I don't want to assume too much. So I'm just going to give you a rundown as a basic to see, what it is really and what we get with it. And to start with, let's state what it isn't, because it's not some interactive tool that's going to provide an end user experience to make all your dreams come true. Essentially, it's an approach that provides a mechanism to take static data in an Excel spreadsheet and pass it through a process whereby it can be loaded and eventually incorporated into your Oracle data set. So what we get are spreadsheets, loads of them. And I took a little bit of effort prior to this presentation here to dig out what I'm hoping is the exhaustive list of the FBDI templates in Cloud Fusion. And all this information here comes from the Oracle Help Center website. It's a little hard to gauge if I've caught them all because the navigation through the documentation is a bit inconsistent, but I'm pretty confident. And you can see here for SCM, we've got 102 FBDI templates in the listing. On the ERP side, if we break it down for financials, we have 54. For projects, you get another 32. Procurement has 15. So that's 203 that I found in the Oracle documentation across the board. So the support is pretty comprehensive. And I guess if I was to linger on the right slide for long enough, it's highly likely that you'll find the template there that suits the requirement you have. So on the functionality side of the ledger, we're in good shape with FBDI. But then if you look at it from another angle, it's a bit concerning because each of these entries is a separate file in its own right. So from an administrative side, it's actually quite daunting when you consider keeping track of version control for each one and all of that. And the other thing is to consider really is the implications from a process perspective. So this here is the FBDI process flow, and it's pretty convoluted. You populate and link your data in the spreadsheet, and then you have to process it through the front end. So there are things to do in Excel, CSV conversions to do, import jobs to run in Oracle, and then error reports in PDF format to reconcile. And then any corrections, we'll need to go back into the worksheet and we run the whole process again. So just looking at that, 2 points are worth mentioning. The first is that you've got a pretty complicated process here. And that's one that your data owning team might not have the expertise to operate, at least not without the risk of human error breaking things down. So you need to ask yourself whether you're going to need to involve external teams or engage more expensive skill sets to run this. And the other is the burden on your data entry teams. Even assuming you're comfortable with the operational aspects, it's going to take a lot of time to accomplish your outcomes with this. It's an iterative process. So reacting to errors and making corrections will mean looping through the process flow a number of times per upload. And with all the switches from Excel to Oracle to PDF documents and back again, it might set off some alarm bells. And then if we look back at these lists again, there's something else to consider. So each of these templates listed here are separate files. So we're going to need to run these import and reconciliation processes separately for each one. And that's a lot to ask. Now, obviously, the teams responsible for project tasks won't be the same people that are driving your purchase orders. I don't want to exaggerate it. But on the other side of it, if we take a closer look at the supplier model here, we see that there are 8 spreadsheets involved with managing supplier master data. And it's 9, really, if you include the banking one, which was on another slide. And if you have to run through that loop 9 times to create your new suppliers, it starts to feel like a pretty onerous task. And that's a major problem, isn't it? It looks like we're in danger of adding extra burden to our entry teams. We want to leverage the advantages of spreadsheet data entry, but at the cost of all this extra work and process, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's food for thought. We'll move on now and just quickly remind ourselves what FBDI looks like. And this is an example from Oracle Procurement, the purchase order template. And it's quite a typical example. So if you look at the content here, you can see we're on a tab for the header level information. You can tell by the name of the open tab there at the bottom. And on this worksheet, we lay out our summary data, but we don't have the line details. So there's one line per order on this tab. And if we click on the lines tab, we see the worksheet for that level. And it's all very distinct. The 2 data sets are independent of one another, so they have to be carefully linked using repetition of key values. So in this case, it's the interface line key and the header line key. So the first row here corresponds to the first one on the previous tab, and then the second and third to the second order on that tab, and so on. And a drawback here is that you can't see both sets of data at the same time. There's a lot of clicking in and out of tabs to line things up correctly, which is a bit of a pain. And then it continues down the data hierarchy. So if I click through, I can see the various other levels of data for, in this case, purchase orders. There's schedules and distributions. Oh, I missed that button. Distributions, schedules, distribution, and so on. And again, on those two, you also have that linking problem. So you need to link the row key here with the key of its parent on the previous sheet without being able to see the two data sets against one another. And you could say it's a bit of a fiddle, but I don't want to make too much light of that because it is a significant usability issue. Because you don't have visibility of the whole hierarchy all at once, there's a lot of scope for user error if you miss things out on one tab that you're relying on in another. And then the final step in the spreadsheet is to generate the files that Oracle needs to receive. So over here in this first tab, there's a button for that. And then you'll have a number of file dialogues to work through before you're done. So I won't go any further with that. We've already seen the process flow. But where does that leave us? We have a tool here that isn't quite what we're looking for. Yes, we can take advantages of the features of Excel, but the downsides are considerable. If you were going to summarize the issues with FBDI, they fall under these basic headings here. And actually, the first point is one I haven't talked about too much yet, but the spreadsheet layouts themselves can lead to trouble. You can't manipulate the grid setup in any way. So you're left with large piles of columns to navigate, and many of them you won't be using. And then, of course, those other things we've already mentioned, the fact that there are so many spreadsheet files to juggle, and we even saw with suppliers that there can be multiple files needed to accomplish a single task. And within each of those, there's usually many tabs to manage, making it difficult, like I said, to organize and visualize. But the real problems come with the loading process. There's just too many steps. And the process is not intuitive to data owners, swapping between the spreadsheet, the front end, the PDF viewer, multiple times to achieve the result. The skills required to do that are not necessarily those that sit easily in your data ownership teams. So there is a likelihood you'll need to mitigate for that with IT resources or dedicated administrative personnel, resources which come at a financial cost and can lead to bottlenecks themselves when their time is called on by a number of parties simultaneously. I mean, to summarize, FBDI is really geared for implementations and migrations, that sort of thing, where there's a one-off task to populate Oracle. It is not really well suited to BAU. But hey, that's just our take on things, and we would be very interested to hear your views on this. Perhaps there are other challenges we haven't covered or other factors we should be bringing into the discussion. So to find that out, we have a polling question that would love it if you could take some time to answer for us. So maybe just submit one or two aspects of FBDI that cause you the most trouble, really whatever it is that brought you into the audience today.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of time to respond, so don't feel like you have to rush.
Take an opportunity to have a little drink of my tea. I'm going to put my headset on so I can hear you, Stephanie.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. I just said I'll give a little bit of time. No worries. If you don't see anything on there too, feel free to add it to the chat. But we can talk about it later as well. All right, just gonna wait for a few more. We're getting there. All right. Anybody else? All right, I'm gonna end it so we just move along.
Do you want to just talk? Are you still there, Steph? Let's just
I'm still here.
maybe
Here, I'll share the
summarize it.
results.
Yeah, okay, do that. Yeah.
There you go. Can you see the results, Sandra? Oh no.
Well,
Okay, so I'll help you with that. So about 35% of the people here actually don't use FBDI. So that's actually interesting. Inflexible layout was also a top contender, as well as error reconciliation. And then limited functionality was top, too many spreadsheet files, and loading process. But it was pretty much all across the board. The download functionality was low. And only one person doesn't have issues with FBDI, so should talk to them later.
No, but I mean, it does kind of underline our expectations. I could see a lot of reason why no download functionality wouldn't be an issue. If you don't have a process that's ever had that as an option, um, you might not miss it, if you know what I mean. But once you get some of these other features on board, you might realize, oh, there's a new world that we could have been exposed to. But the error reconciliation, IT reliance, the loading process. I mean, it's exactly what we'd expect. It's a very powerful tool, but it doesn't lend itself to the human at the other end of it, which is part of the reason why More4apps is here. So I think we probably go on to the next slide. Do you want to close that down, the poll?
Yep.
Or do
All
I
good.
do it myself? I've got it
No,
in
you're all
front of me?
good.
Okay, right. Let's move on. And all of these things that we've talked about, actually, they leave us in a bit of a quandary, because what we really want is a tool that gives us the advantages of data entry in a spreadsheet, but one that comes with a process flow more in line with the skill set of our data entry community. Basically, we're looking for simplicity, one that's as simple as possible. And that's where we here at More4apps think we can help you. Our tools are designed to meet the shortcomings of FBDI head on. So we have simple, pre-configured, reusable spreadsheets with built-in upload and download features and a user experience entirely configured with the end user in mind, your data owners, stripping away any reliance on any expensive IT resources or expertise. Our tools offer in-sheet validation of your data values, something entirely lacking in FBDI, and all error and status feedback is returned directly to the spreadsheet in line with the records in themselves. So removing all of that fiddly reconciliation from those external documents. The tools offer complete flexibility in terms of layout, so you can remove your columns if you're not using them and still enjoy all those great features of Excel, like copy and paste and formulas and lookups and all of that. It's all provided on a resilient platform. So we're going to save you all of that hard work with patching and version control. That will look after that. And the tools harness the Oracle public web services, meaning your uploaded data is completely supported within the terms of your Oracle support contract. So we have two suites of product on the market. The EBS Toolbox is for your business suite and the ERP Cloud Toolbox for Cloud Fusion. And that's what we're talking about today. And these tools are going to revolutionize your approach to data loading. The four modules allow you to manipulate your data in an Excel spreadsheet with complete flexibility and then pass that information up to Oracle via Oracle certified SOAP and REST services. Within each module, you've got pre-configured templates for each of the tasks you need. So there's no need for config, but you can also customize those, change the columns around, move them over here and there, remove any unnecessary ones to create a working environment specific to your requirements. So we'll just zoom in now and see what it looks like. This is an example here from the procurement module. It's the requisitions template. So you can see here that the product works as an Excel add-in. So you have dedicated controls for uploading and downloading in the worksheet. And it's designed to give you maximum visibility of your whole document or your whole data hierarchy at one time. So the whole hierarchy is in one sheet. Headers, lines, all there together. So there's less scope to miss elements out because you can scroll over to the right there and inspect that everything is as you would want it to be. Download feature is worth emphasizing. So you can directly source the sheet with data from Oracle. And that is super useful for updates or any data replication tasks that you might be performing. Edit forms allow you to inspect multiple values at the same time, which compares well with some of the Oracle offerings. And the Oracle validation lists and drop-downs and so on are there for you to ensure a clean data set. You get feedback directly in row for your uploads, and the errors are clearly marked and will generally indicate which field you need to correct. So it's easy to reconcile that. And then again, layouts are flexible. The tool uses the column headings there in row 9 to identify the purpose of each column. And that means you're free to move them around as you see fit to give you the most agreeable working environment. Obviously, again, you can remove them if you're not using them, and that does not impact any of the uploads. So you really can design a worksheet that fits your process without anything unnecessary there. And then the upload process itself is invoked by this button up here. And there are absolutely no steps to perform from outside the spreadsheet. So if we go back to that slide with the summary of challenges, we can see how the toolbox compares. And all of those issues mentioned have gone away. And then with the user-focused interface, there are extra features to make the whole data entry process more manageable, more human-facing. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look at how it works. I've got a short video recording of an example scenario. In this case, it's the procurement module and loading and managing requisitions. So we have the requisition template open here in Excel. And at the top of the screen, you can see the More4apps controls. We're creating new records, so we need to get our data into the worksheet. We might start by typing data values directly into the spreadsheet. We can leverage all the power of Excel. And of course, that includes formulas. And we can paste data in from an external source. We can also apply default values to save time entering the same values over and over again. And those values will automatically populate in the rows when the load happens. And to help out with data accuracy, there's built-in forms which mirror the Oracle validation rules and lists of values for each element. You can see there's support for flex fields too. There's support for attachments. If we use the form to create one, you can see that all the attachment types are supported, and we can set the category and so on, as you would expect. And of course, select our file in the pop-up, which makes things easy. Sheet layouts are completely flexible. At any time, we can shift columns around to get them in the order we prefer, remove unwanted columns. So we can customize our sheet to suit the business process. And we click on Upload to send it all up to Oracle. And you can see here that where upload rejections occur, the messaging is clear, and wherever possible, the problem cell is highlighted. So it's easy to fix the data and upload the corrected record. We can use the built-in download button to check those requisitions loaded correctly. There's a form which lets you choose download criteria. But we know the ones we're after, so we'll just put the requisition numbers in here and download them using download via sheet. And there's those 3 new requisitions. And you can see how handy it is to be able to review the full detail of so many at the same time, not being limited to one at a time like in the Oracle forms. And from here, we can proceed to make updates or create further records. So that's a pretty good walkthrough of how the product works. But in real terms, what are the wins? So I'm going to play another short video. I apologize for this now, but it highlights the performance of the toolbox when viewed side by side with the equivalent FBDI template. It only runs for about 90 seconds. We'll mix things up a bit here. We'll use the finance module for this example. We're going to load 3 AR invoices, each with 10 lines, and we'll do that with both the ERP Cloud Toolbox and then Oracle's recommended process. And that's coupling FBDI and then ADFDI for error rec. So we'll just get that running now. So we have the ERP Cloud Toolbox on the left and the FBDI template on the right, with the same data set on both sides. So we'll get a proper comparison. 3 invoices, each with 10 lines. So off we go. And on the left here, you can see with the finance module from the toolbox, we're validating and uploading the data. On the right, we're preparing the CSV file. Now we've assumed the data is in a format that people can use or ready for upload. Obviously with FBDI, you need to link the files. And you can see on the left here, we've already finished the upload process, but we've found a problem. If you look at the line level there, there's an invalid item number. So we use the user form to fix that issue. And on the right side, we're still getting sorted out. We're navigating, picking up the files, and starting to do the import process. Still quite a way from even validating the data or getting it into Oracle. And you look on the left side, you can see we've selected our item and we're uploading again. And now this invoice is being created. And we're finished. Process complete. It's that simple. Done and dusted, 46 seconds. Now, if you look across to the right, you can see we're onto the auto invoice import process. Still miles behind. So I'm going to speed up the rest of this process. It's really taking far too long. There's too many steps. And it's painful to have to review summary reports, execution reports, and then have to log in again with ADFDI. And then in ADFDI, we have to search for the different errors from the interface table, make the fixes to the errors, again with a lack of validation, and re-upload to the interface table. And all it takes us more than 7.5 minutes for the whole process. Not really something you'd be wanting to give your end users. So that's pretty compelling stuff. But what did we just see there? Counting the logins required to run the process. With More4apps, it was 1 versus 2 on the Oracle side. Software counts, just the 1 compared to 3 on the other side there. And as for swaps between user interfaces, none versus 4. And that total time, 46 seconds versus more than 7.5 minutes. That's a huge difference. And then the general comparison is quite revealing too. And we've touched on most of these points already, but it is interesting to see them side by side. The More4apps tool,
Give us 1 second. Looks like
organized session.
Hey, Andrew, you
Sorry.
a little bit on the last slide.
Wow.
At least it was towards the end.
Was it this slide?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to say. It's just it's interesting to see them side by side, but we've touched on most of these points already.
Great.
So yeah, time for questions. We've got a bit of time as long as my internet doesn't drop again. I'll do my best to answer them. Any that I can't answer myself, we'll take a note and we'll make sure somebody from the organization responds to you. Generally, we're all right. So Stephanie, I think you've got everything in front of you.
So we actually have one. It was more of like a comment about the poll. It was from Denise, and she says that we are halfway through our conversion from 12 to Fusion ERP. So we don't use FBDI yet, but the plan is that it will be adopted for several of the processes that we use More4apps today. This scenario wasn't an option in the poll, but may be a situation for some of the other 35% of the participants. And she's referring to the 35% that actually don't use FBDI. So that's interesting. Any comment on that? Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're one of our customers in the EBS space, we've been around for 20 plus years in that area, and Oracle has been really mature in that space. With Fusion, it's taking Oracle a little bit of time to provide the services, the SOAP and REST APIs essentially that we need to invoke. And we don't create a product until Oracle's supported service is trustworthy. So it's taken us time to get the same offerings in the Fusion areas we've had historically in EBS, but we are getting there. We've just released our supplier master data 1. Customers is coming next. So those of you that come from EBS that are saying, well, we're looking at FBDI because More4apps doesn't exist for us, keep in touch, because in the next 12 months, I expect a lot of those gaps to be filled.
Great. We have 2 more so far. So how does your toolbox relate to Visual Builder Excel add-in, as that calls separate APIs?
So that's the VBCS, I assume, that they're talking about. So that's an Oracle environment in a way where you can build these things over your REST services. So it's kind of a similar approach, but the difference is that when you build anything in VBCS, that's on you. So you've got to do the research, you've got to understand the processes, the API rules, the validation. You've got to put validation on your old controls yourselves, and then you've got to maintain that and then improve it and adapt it when Oracle, moves the technology forward. We're using those SOAP services and REST services too, but we have a whole team of people that you don't have to pay individually that will be providing all of those resources and all of that expertise for you. So we just do all the hard work for you basically, but it's the same thing. VBCS has some issues. Actually, there are limitations with VBCS. It doesn't have the same access to a deep data hierarchy that our products have, but you can do quite a bit with VBCS, but you have to be a development shop yourself essentially, and whether or not you've got the budget for that, and that's up to you.
All right, and we have a few more actually, so get ready. What are the main pushbacks you hear from IT, and how is the best way to overcome them? So I'm assuming this is regarding IT and FBDI. Steve, if you want to clarify, but yeah.
Well, I'll answer it from our perspective. So I'll just explain our architecture in a really high level way. So we have you have Excel on your desktop, and you have an add-in installed on your desktop. And then on the Oracle side, because of the way Cloud Fusion is installed now, it's essentially software as a service. So there isn't a footprint there. When you purchase our products, you do a little bit of config. So anybody who's going to be a user of our product needs to be granted the roles to those REST and SOAP services that they need to do to pull that data out or push that data into Oracle. So there's config on that side. On the desktop side, there is an Excel toolbox, what's it called? Add-in, sorry, that needs to be installed. So that's, if we get any pushback at all, it's like, how are we going to deploy? Our previous tools were using VB and they didn't have any footprint on the PCs themselves. This product is improved, but there is a footprint. So that's probably the biggest thing that people are concerned about. But you can do remote deployment, so shouldn't really be an issue.
So are attachments supported for transactions like invoices?
They are, yeah. There's a lot of attachments. I don't know off the top of my head which ones are supported, but there's attachments at AR and AP invoice level, header and line. It's worthwhile taking a look at the product documentation if you want to know particulars, but if there's any missing, it's because Oracle doesn't support it on the SOAP service. We support attachments as a general feature in this product, and we saw them in that video actually on the purchase order. So you should expect them to be there.
Another one is, can we do bulk upload of supplier data with More4apps? So that's funny. That's actually
that's interesting. So we've just launched this, and the answer is yes. So that was kind of spoken about in a little detail with when I mentioned those 8+1, the 9 FBDI templates that you need. So we have the supplier integrator. It's part of our finance module, and you can update and create all of the supplier master data that you'd expect to. And I think we're actually going to run web ADI, supplier FBDI versus More4apps webinar coming up not too distant future. So if you need more information, there'll be some more in that.
Yes, we have another one. It's, when will the finance toolbox be available? It is available. And then Jack, I know you're asking about the annual cost per license. We'll just make sure someone reaches out to you about that, since I don't think Andrew or myself know.
I don't want to speak for the sales team.
Yeah. Oh, then this is also Jack. He says that we have 16 tax books. Can you upload to multiple books like the EBS tool?
I sorry, I don't know that level of detail on a particular product, but
we'll note it. I'll note it.
We'll send that to the functional team that support that area, and they'll give you the answer.
And then we have another one. So how many different templates do we need to use as per More4apps? One for each module, or just one across Oracle Cloud?
How many spreadsheet files? So what? You could actually just use one file for your entire ERP needs. So because what you've got is, it's an add-in in your Oracle in your Excel toolbar, and you can create as many sheets or as few sheets as you like, and you can generate them according to what roles your authorization within the Oracle, within the config I mentioned. You could create a supplier one and a purchase order one and a project task one in the same sheet if you like. And I'm not saying anyone would ever do that, but there's no requirement for you to have lots of templates. You purchase the product, you get the procurement or the finance module, whatever it is that you need, and then these are available in your toolbar when you want to create a template sheet. So yeah, it's not the same as EBS. EBS, there's all these copies of files. You don't have that now. You just open up Excel, and then it's just a spreadsheet. Honestly, it's like a grid like any other. It has a few rules with the column headings, but yeah, you can create any templates you like according to what you've already purchased, basically.
Okay. Have you seen organizations using More4apps to save on Oracle licensing?
I personally haven't, but I mean, what you would, yeah, save licensing, I'm not sure. You might save headcount. You still have to pay for, like, if you're doing procurement, you still have to pay for procurement, right? So you're not getting around your license cost there. But you might have fewer people required to be licensed as end users, so the number of seats might drop.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Lonnie, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I also noted you down, so I'll send that to the right person for your for all that. Any other questions? How long does it typically take for the implementation of More4apps cloud products?
Well, implementation, it's two things you're talking about. So the install doesn't take very long. Let's say you're doing 5 PCs and you've got a config for 5 users. That would take you about 30 minutes to an hour. The implementation itself is about getting trust, right? So you've got to work out whether there's a product from More4apps that you require. Then you want to prove that it's got answering your requirements, and then you want to do a bench test, proof of concept, and all of that. So that's a process that you would follow within your organization. You don't need to do it from our perspective. So it's really how long it takes your organization to run those kind of trust steps. Typically, people would do a proof of concept. We give them a test license, an ability to trial it for about 7 days, I think, and that's a good proof of concept. And then probably a similar, maybe twice as long, to do a bit of heavy testing. So what do you call that? Heavy. I've forgotten the terminology, where you do a proper bench test to make sure you're happy with the volumes and all of that. But yeah, wouldn't expect it to take more than a couple of weeks. It really depends how much energy and how much focus you have on it.
We do have a follow-up to that. I did skip some, but it's just a follow-up. And she's asking, what are the steps for the installation? Are there a lot of steps?
Well, it's just the ones I mentioned earlier. So you've got to install the PC, the add-in into the Excel. That's just a little Windows MSI type file, where you click on next. On the Oracle side, there's no install. You just have to configure the users. So you have to make sure that they are authorized to use the REST services. So that's the APIs, right? So when you have access to a form in Oracle, there's a role and a responsibility behind that. There's a different role and responsibility for you to do it through the REST or the SOAP gateway. So you need to assign those. And we've got instructions of how to do that. Depending on which integrators and which products you're using. I mean, I can't really give you a definite figure, but it's a fairly brainless task that you follow the instructions. I wouldn't expect it to take more than an hour for 5 or 6 users. I mean, what you do is you create an authority group, and then you assign that to your users. So shouldn't take you long. But you might find that just from a confidence level, you want to do it on a few systems first. But I wouldn't be concerned about the time. If you say you're going to do it on Monday, you'll be finished on Monday. That's for sure.
Okay, we got quite a few more questions. So this one is a licensing based on number of users, or how does that work? I don't know. We could also pass that off if we don't want to answer that one.
Well, I mean, it's to do with seats. So you buy. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to. I don't want to talk about numbers because I'm not part of the sales team. But you'll be buying. Let's say you're buying projects. You'll be buying projects module 5 users, and it may be even that isn't
Yeah, we can send more
locked.
information on
Yeah, I
that.
think it's probably best to talk to the
Yeah.
salespeople. It is the
Mhm.
seats that's important though, not so much the modules. So if you've got 10 users, that's what you need to think about. I'll be charged for 10 users.
Yeah. And then what is that one? I think Denise, she did ask, do we need to create custom roles for More4apps to work, or is this based on the same role that FBDI uses? But
Well, I don't know that FBDI uses roles for access. She probably knows more than me. Our typical installation instructions say it's quicker if you create a More4apps role and then you collect all of the authorities within that role and assign that. You don't have to do it that way, but then you got to do those individual steps for each user, whereas you can just assign that More4apps role to your users. But it's how you like to
um,
operate, really.
mhm. And then another one, are there limitations in reference to the number of line items per spreadsheet?
No, there's no limitations. As far as, I haven't heard of any limitations at all. So your limitations are those giant limitations that Excel has, which is they're not limitations now. Effectively, whatever number of million lines, rows you're allowed. I can't remember the numbers, but they're staggering. I would say, and I don't want to. Maybe people at Morphoraps wouldn't like me to say, but I wouldn't necessarily be using a spreadsheet interface for hundreds of millions of lines because it still has to be processed through your desktop. So at some point you have to go like, how much money am I investing in a user interface when maybe we should be doing that machine to machine. But there isn't any reason not to use Excel for that, except that I mean you're talking about going row to row through a spreadsheet, and that has a certain time cost. So when you get to millions, I would be questioning whether that's the right approach. But we've got customers who are doing hundreds of thousands up to a million, and it works. But yeah, honestly, at some point, IT investment is required. Um, a lot of the reason why Morphoraps exists is because you know, it's return on investment. Yeah, you can build these products to, these tools yourselves, but how much is that going to cost versus how much I'm going to get out of that? And yeah, when you start to get to the real limits of Excel, then yeah, maybe that is worth investing in. That's all I'd say.
Cool. Jack said that he's done up to 77,000. So he said thank you.
Yeah.
Um, this was another one. Do we need to install something on the server or only on the computer?
Well, there's no, yeah, in the Cloud Fusion world, there's no install on the server. We don't really think of them as servers now. So Oracle's got a software as a service, and we don't really get to do much on that. You or us at More4apps. Um, when it's being patched, they give you Oracle 23D or whatever, and then you use it like a playpen. So what you have to do on the Oracle side is assign your users the services or the responsibilities, and they're not called that now, but roles that allow them to do the task. So it's kind of config that you need to do on Oracle. On the desktop, it's just the Excel add-in.
And then she also asked, are the users concurrent or named users?
It's concurrent. Yeah, so they're not named. So we've had this question. We're trying to remember ourselves within our pre-sales team recently. I think it's a user can use it, and then within a day, then that will be released for the next user. So you don't need to have them named. If you've got 15 people in your team, 10 of them can use it at once, and then tomorrow a different 10 could use it. So you don't have to worry too much about people taking leave or anything that, do you know what I mean? Like it's yeah, concurrent in that sense rather than
Great.
named.
And then we have one final question. I haven't seen anyone else add any more. Could you use the download function for project updates to things like budgets and tasks?
Absolutely. And we've got templates pre-built for that. The projects module is one of our most feature rich, and we definitely have budgets. We have bucket budgets. We have awards budgets, and definitely tasks. I mean, I've got a whole presentation on that I can show you, but yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, cool. So that looks like that's it for the questions. So before Andrew, let you have your final remarks. So I just want to remind everybody that the recording and presentation will be sent out tomorrow. So just please keep an eye out for that email. And again, thank you for taking the time to join us. Andrew?
Yeah, I just wanted to finish off by saying a big thanks, really. Thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully you found it informative. Hopefully you found it worthwhile. Like you can see there, my contact details are up. So, if there's anything you've forgotten or you want to get in touch with me directly, please do, and I'll get back to you as soon as I hear from you. So, yeah, thanks again.
All right, thank you, everybody.